Never before has the world of journalism been so explosive, so global, and so competitive. Forget hourly news flashes, we live in a world of 24-hour breaking news, with radio and TV stations and internet news sites updating stories by the minute. The provision of accurate and authoritative statistical information strengthens modern societies. It provides a basis for decisions to be made on such things as where to open schools and hospitals, how much money to spend on welfare payments, and even which football players to replace at halftime. You may have heard of the new fad known as ecotourism. This means tourism which is environmentally friendly and conscious about conserving the environment. The key is to minimize the physical, social, and behavioral impacts of overseas travel. Tour groups will often work with local and indigenous communities to design respectful and memorable programs for visitors.
The Italian alphabet has fewer letters in comparison with the English alphabet. Italian does not use the letters J, K, W, X or Y except in borrowed words. However, young Italians are increasingly using the letter K in words that would be written with C or CH in standard Italian orthography. The government is still not sure whether its alternative idea for the Auckland's America's Cup Village is viable, a week out from the start of the planning approval process. Auckland Council is seeking approval to build 8 bases across 3 wharves, but the government was in favour of focusing on the semi-industrial Wynyard Point to lessen the extension of wharves. Hundreds of millions of American people eat fast food every day without giving it too much thought, unaware of the subtle and not-so-subtle ramifications of their purchases. They just grab their tray off the counter, find a table, take a seat, unwrap the paper, and dig in. The whole experience is transitory and soon forgotten. Long isolated from Western Europe, Russia grew up without participating in the development like the Reformation that many Europeans taking pride in their unique culture find dubious value. Russia is, as a result, the most unusual member of European family, if indeed it is European at all. The question is still open to debate, particularly among Russians themselves. Few things in the world produce such amazement as one's first of clippers of the Grand Canyon. It took around more than 2 billion years to create this vast wonder in some places. 17 miles wide, largely through the relentless force of Colorado River, which runs 277 miles along its length, a mile beneath its towering rims. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. Social media are playing an increasingly important role as information sources for travelers. The goal of this study is to investigate the extent to which social media appear in search engine results in the context of travel-related searches. It also provides evidence for challenges faced by traditional providers of travel-related information.
Electronic discourse is one form of interactive electronic communication. In this study, we reserve the term for the two-directional texts in which one person using a keyboard writes language that appears on the sender's monitor and is transmitted to the monitor of a recipient, who responds by keyboard. As we progress into the 21st century, communications are becoming faster and faster. Think of millions of different media images you are bombarded with every day. It is as important now to be able to read and make sense of those images, as it has been to be able to read ordinary text. The Office of Personnel Management was the target of the attack, but data from nearly every government agency was stolen. US investigators say they believe Chinese hackers were behind the breach. In the past, wars have led to inflation and higher commodity prices. Fighting disrupts trade and prevents raw materials from being shipped from one country to another. In Second World War Britain, a banana was the height of luxury. The main difference on this occasion was that the colonists were not just fighting against a king who was determined to use his own prerogative, they were also fighting against a parliament which believed that it and it alone should raise taxes and control revenues, rights which had been won in the previous century. Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. Networking is easy and fun because it taps into this human predilection to talk about ourselves when asked. Consider successful networking as little more than the process of guiding a person to tell you about his life, what he's doing, the company that employs him, and his current industry. Ever since I remembered, Father woke up at 5:30 every morning, made us all breakfast and read newspaper. After that he would go to work. He worked as a writer. It was a long time before I realized he did this for a living. In the photo, the wildcat's huge paws are clamped onto the side of the white safari jeep in which Chapel was a passenger. Almost as tall as the jeep on her hind legs, she appears to be forcing her muzzle into the back window. A recent trend in the entertainment world is to adapt classic works of literature for either TV or movies. One argument is that this is to everyone's benefit, as it introduces people to works they might otherwise never have, but is rarely done successfully. It seems that, when it comes to love, men and women are designed to misconstrue, misread and misunderstand one another and themselves. Look more closely at the unconscious workings of the mating mind, however, and you discover that in fact they make good sense. Human speech is a complex learned skill and is dependent on a number of memory and neurological functions. Speech is a closed-loop system because sensors within the system itself give feedback to the control portion of the system. Your tutor helps you make the most of your time at university by giving you guidance and support along the way. All new students are allocated a personal tutor who will encourage you to get the most out of your course, direct you to other sources of support and help you achieve your goals. There are many kinds of pond, but nearly all are small bodies of shallow, stagnant water in which plants with roots can grow. Water movement is slight, and temperatures fluctuate widely. The wealth of plants ensures that during daylight hours oxygen is plentiful. However, at night, when photosynthesis no longer takes place, oxygen supplies can fall very low. The simultaneous social feedback for performance improvement in communal settings may influence the Marvel characters of a person. The innate abilities come from continuous improvement of social skills from generations. Thus, anyone wants to get an upper hand should get used to objectives planning and analysis of past experiences. While blue is one of the most popular colors, it is one of the least appetizing. Blue food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans searched for food, they learned to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite. The maximum yield of plants, determined by their genetic potential, is seldom achieved because factors such as insufficient water or nutrients, adverse climate conditions, plant diseases, and insect damage will limit growth at some stage. Plants subjected to these biotic and abiotic constraints are said to be stressed. When a virus invades your cells, it kicks your immune machinery into motion. The first responders are signaling proteins, called interferon. And they trigger downstream immune responses. So you can kind of think of them as the hormones of the immune system. They are triggered and then they stimulate a bunch of other immune responses that are more specific to that pathogen. Michelle Baker, comparative immunologist at the Australian Animal Health Laboratory. Pluto was one of the 9 planets recognized in our solar system. But in 2006, it was relegated to the official status of dwarf planet by the International Astronomical Union, IAU. It will bring into clear focus once more what is, and what isn't, meant by the term planet. Although it hails from a remote region of the western Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers and colonized river banks and damp woodlands. In the Himalayas, the plant is held in check by various pests, but take these away and it grows and reproduces unhindered. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, Canada, and the US. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience. The core of the problem was the immense disparity between the country's productive capacity and the ability of people to consume. Great innovations in productive techniques during and after the war raised the output of industry beyond the purchasing capacity of U.S. farmers and wage earners. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple of hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. Along with customary classes on subjects such as finance, accounting, and marketing, today's MBA students are enrolling on courses for environmental policy and stewardship. Indeed, more than half of business schools require a course in environmental sustainability or corporate social responsibility, according to a survey of 91 U.S. business schools, published in October 2005. There are perhaps three ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room. In other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of art. As a historian, if you really want to understand the sensibilities of those who lived in the past, you must be like a novelist and get into the skins of your characters and think and feel as they do. You are asked to imagine what it's like to be a peasant in medieval times, asking the sort of questions a peasant might ask. What the writer is saying is that a historian needs imaginative sympathy with ordinary people in the past. Humans need to use energy in order to exist. So it is unsurprising that the way people have been producing energy is largely responsible for current environmental problems. Pollution comes in many forms, but those that are most concerning, because of their impact on health, result from the combustion of fuels in power stations and cars. Networking is easy and fun because it taps into this human predilection to talk about ourselves when asked. Consider successful networking as little more than the process of guiding a person to tell you about his life, what he's doing, the company that employs him, and his current industry.
Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions established to collect, study, exchange, and display plants for research and for the education and enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens in each capital city. Zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation, and display of native and exotic fauna in captivity. Augustus was given the powers of an absolute monarch, but he presented himself as the preserver of republican traditions. He treated the Senate, or State Council, with great respect, and was made consul year after year. He successfully reduced the political power of the army by retiring many soldiers, but giving them land or money to keep their loyalty. The uniquely scented flavor of vanilla is second only to chocolate in popularity on the world's palate. It's also the second most expensive spice after saffron. But highly labor-intensive cultivation methods and the plant's temperamental life cycle and propagation mean production on a global scale is struggling to keep up with the increasing demand for the product. The course considers the ways in which thinkers have responded to the particular political problems of their day and the ways in which they contribute to a broader conversation about human goods and needs, justice, democracy, and the proper relationship of the individual to the state. Your tutor helps you make the most of your time at university by giving you guidance and support along the way. All new students are allocated a personal tutor who will encourage you to get the most out of your course, direct you to other sources of support and help you achieve your goals. Members of a culture must conform to its norms for the culture to exist and function. Hence, members must want to conform and obey rules. They first must internalize the social norms and values that dictate what is normal for the culture. Then they must socialize or teach norms and values to their children. A study of nearly 2,000 children found that those who reported playing video games for 3 hours per day or more performed better on cognitive skills tests involving impulse control and working memory compared to children who had never played video games.
We've spent a lot of money over the last 70 years on flood control, and it's protected millions of people and has saved us billions of dollars. We've built dams to hold back the waters. We've built levees to keep the water off the people, and we've raised the ones that were originally started in 1718.
Scholars build their own personal libraries to support not only particular projects but also general reading in their field. They buy or make photocopies of materials when possible, so they can consult them frequently, mark pages and write annotation on them. When moving into a new field, they add to their collections, usually concentrating on primary texts. Moods may also have an effect on how information is processed, by influencing the extent to which judges rely on pre-existing, internal information, or focus on new, external information. Positive moods promote more holistic and top-down processing style, while negative moods recruit more stimulus-driven and bottom-up processing. In 1861, Matthew Brady, well-known portrait photographer, approached President Lincoln requesting permission to move freely about the country photographing the Civil War. Lincoln granted him permission to travel anywhere with the Union armies, and his record of this conflict brought home to millions the horrors of war.